Hi and welcome to another episode of Baranov TV, designed to demystify the world of accounts and tax and to help your business grow. Now, I have put off doing a video on this subject, but it can't be avoided any longer, and that is coronavirus. There's so much in the media and everywhere else about it. You cannot possibly avoid it. It's unprecedented, the actions and just the upheaval that it's causing throughout the world. So I wanted to just touch primarily on the most important implication it's having as far as we're concerned on our clients, and that is around cash. And with the fear and everything else, people aren't going out, they aren't creating footfall in a lot of businesses. They're cancelling, they're sitting tight, they're hunkering down, and businesses are already feeling the implications. We're already speaking to clients and trying to help them and trying to support them through what is an unknown process. So first off, we need to be very careful about cash. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know whether the UK is going to go into lockdown. So we need to make sure that we're protecting ourselves for the future, whatever that may bring. So we need to make sure that we go through our businesses and work out what we absolutely have to be paying out for. We need to work out what our staff requirements are, and we need to think about whether we need to be laying staff off, whether we need to be cutting their working hours. But to do that, we need to make sure that we're speaking to our HR advisors and making sure that we're checking what's in our contracts. Beyond that, we need to make sure, obviously, we're looking carefully at what other payments we absolutely have to be making. And that includes things like rent, but also what else in your business do you absolutely need to pay out? What can't you postpone? Once you've worked that out, you will get to a figure of how much you actually have to pay out every month. And when you do that, you need to cut anything as far as possible. Speak to your team, get them involved, ask them what we can cut, what have I missed. Then you need to think about what your worst case scenario looks like. So do you have some customers that are automatically taking your product, your service, that will continue to do so? Or is your worst case scenario absolutely no sales for a period of time? Whatever that looks like, you need to be realistic about it. You need to plan for the worst case scenario, because what you're trying to do is find what your potential gap might be. Ideally, obviously, you do a cash flow forecast for the next 12 months. But at the moment, how can you? We all appreciate that that is just not going to be worth the paper it's written on. In the last 3 days of last week, Barcelona went from normal business to total lockdown. So it's not worth doing a 12-month cash flow. You just need to do scenario planning, really. Once you've got your gap, you need to think about how you're going to fill it. You need to work out how you're going to find finance to fill that gap, to make sure that your business will survive whatever is thrown at it. And the thing is, if you are looking to fill that now, you will be filling that gap ahead of majority of the other businesses that are out there who will still need to do the same process, because what you want to do is make sure that you're putting yourself ahead of everybody else, because your business needs to come first. So you need to make sure that your application is in advance of the flood that will hit in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, when other people actually realise, oh, this isn't working, and come out of the panic and paranoia that is all over social media. So the best thing to do is to respond now. But one of the big things that came out of the budget last week was that the government and the revenue have put 2,000 more people on time to pay phone lines. Now, our advice would be that time to pay is a brilliant move if you want to protect your cash flow. However, if you are not going to have enough cash, having done that, to get through any unforeseen circumstances, then, and you need to look for finance, if you have taken out a time to pay arrangement, it is unlikely you will be able to get a finance from an alternative source. banks will not look at it favourably, other lenders will not look at it favourably. So whilst that is available, make sure that you only use that when you've already got the extra funding that you might need. Also, if you are looking to look at the government loan, which I'll come back to in a minute, that equally may not be available if you have not paid, for example, your VAT. So do think about using the time to pay route, but make sure that you only do that if you don't need any other funding. Anyway, let's move on. Make sure that you apply for your funding as soon as you know you need it, and before the impact of this is showing in your bank statements if you can, because you need to portray your business as strongly as possible when you're putting that application in. What you don't want to do is wait until you can't pay all of your bills to apply for the funding, because any lender's first question is going to be, how are you going to repay me? And if you can't show that you have any hope of doing so, then you will really struggle to get any kind of finance at all. Now, so who do you go to look for finance? Well, the banks are out there. They are making the right noises, but they are still likely to be very slow to provide any financing. They also have a lot of criteria, which we all know from previously. So banks will be a route, but they may not be the best route. Alternative funding, that whole entire market, has lots of different options out there. They can be very flexible. They can also be a lot faster than the traditional banks. They have options such as you can do individual invoice financing. So if you are doing, I don't know, a £50,000 invoice to Tesco's, you can fund just that one invoice. You can fund all of your invoices to Tesco's. For example, if someone like that who pays quite slowly, you might think that it's worth doing an invoice financing route to get those funds into your business faster. You don't have to use that. You can set it up but then not use it. You can use it, as I say, for one invoice. The other option is to have a revolving credit facility, which again you only pay for if you use it. That might be the right way to go to give yourself a buffer of cash in your account that if you don't use, you can then pay back, but you've got it there to call on should you need it. You may end up paying 1 or 2% interest for a couple of months, or for 1 or 2 months interest, but you can then get your application in for the government loan, which is going to be at more favourable rates, we hope, and then you repay the whatever you've borrowed elsewhere. But it gives you that buffer zone, it gives you that peace of mind in the meantime. That's the idea of this, is to give yourself peace of mind and to protect the business. It's not going to negate the impact of coronavirus on any of us, but hopefully it will get you through the worst while everyone's in max panic mode, before everyone sort of started to calm down and started to be more logical about it all. It also buys you time to get creative and start to think, well, how can I change my offer to work around the circumstances that we have? Can I move online? Can I work out how to do this with contact electronically rather than face to face? Can you be more agile? You can also use the time to educate your customers about how your service and your environment potentially is safer. So the hygiene rules that you've taken, the different approaches that you might be able to take if you can't move everything online. Obviously, as ever, if you need any help with any of this, then do get in touch. The two biggest options that are coming in are the government loans that were talked about in the budget last week, which is technically called the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme. The first real information about that, and the first tangible information, which we're all waiting desperately for, is likely to come out next week. So it's still going to be some time into the future. The rate things are moving. There are going to be 40 plus lenders that have access to the funds. The government is guaranteeing up to 80% of any loan, up to £1.2 million per business, and up to 1.2 billion has been made available. And these are primarily aimed at businesses with little availability of security. So businesses who can't offer assets as security. But it's likely to take time to get off the ground. If the first information about them isn't likely to come out until next week, beyond that, we're going to have the lenders are going to need to get their schemes set up, get their criteria in place, get their approval mechanisms in place and all the paperwork, etc. So those are going to take time to come out. So you need to fill the gap between now and then. The other option obviously is the £3,000 grant that was also announced as part of the budget. That is coming out and going to be accessible via local councils. That is also likely to be very slow. You are going to need to apply for that funding. So again, that's another hurdle, it's another delay. We will obviously pass out more details as we get them, but that is all that we know right now on that score. You need to get through to the point where those become available, but you also need to make sure that you're protecting your personal finances as a business owner. So it may be that if you can reduce your personal outgoings, then you can reduce the pressure on the business in terms of dividends, for example. We've had an email over the weekend from the Halifax that talked about mortgage holidays and overdraft fees and all of those sorts of things. I have also seen that some of the other banks are doing similar offers and opportunities. So if you have loans or borrowings or mortgages from other banks, do speak to them, find out what the situation is and see whether there's anything that you can do on that. Ask your suppliers whether there's anything you can do in terms of extending your terms, because we're all looking to make sure that we're protecting our businesses, and your suppliers won't be any different. So they may be actually receptive to making some sort of arrangement with you to protect your cash flow. Check your business interruption cover. Make sure that you've got you know what insurance you have, so that you know what you're planning for. Will your insurance cover you for anything that's coming up at the moment? Not all policies will. Make sure that you're chasing any debtors that you've got. We know that everybody is scared, everyone is worried about the future, but make sure that you are chasing what you are owed. It's up to you whether you make a decision based on a customer's current situation as to give them more credit, or whether to go, no, do you know what, I want it. You need to make sure that you're working with relationships right now, so it is possibly a case-by-case decision to be made. You might want to suggest that your customers might want to stockpile your product. Depending on what you supply, it may be something that actually they might want to stockpile that now, because your supply chain might be affected and it may have massive implication on them. I'm not talking toilet rolls here, but you may need to have that conversation with people. Do they need to actually overorder right now? It might give you a little bit more cash coming in sooner rather than later to see you through this gap. And finally, not the cheeriest of suggestions, but given the mortality rates, make sure that your will is up to date. If you are running a limited company, it is a separate legal entity. And if the company is left without any directors, you need to make sure that there is a plan in place for what will happen, and that your family is protected should the worst happen, so that they know what you want doing and they know what to do. That's a very lengthy Baranov TV. I'm really sorry, but hopefully it's helpful. As ever, as I mentioned before, if you want to speak to us, if we can help in any way, shape or form, please do get in touch. It is what we're here for. We are aware that it is uncharted territory right now, and we will do everything that we can to help you as a client. The biggest message I want you to take from this video, though, is that if you need to have finance, you need to know sooner rather than later, and you need to be applying whilst your business is looking as strong as possible to maximise your opportunities in order to get that finance. So that's my message. Keep smiling, don't panic, and just try and look forward, and we'll be in touch very soon with more, and I'll leave you with that.